I'm Terrence James, and you're watching another episode of Neutral Reviews, where we do real reviews for real decisions. And today we are looking at the all-new 2023 Mazda MX-30 EV GT. And I have borrowed the keys for this vehicle from Mazda Canada. Now, the MX-30 is Mazda's first attempt at a fully electric vehicle. And unlike a lot of the other companies that have decided to start at the premium end of their lineup, Mazda has started with their entry level, which we appreciate. Although I still don't know if $45,000 Canadian plus fees and taxes would consider a entry level, but that is what they all are nowadays. Now, this is based on Mazda's very popular Mazda 3, their little hatchback. And it kind of is a Frankenstein vehicle. Not necessarily looking, it's a very good looking vehicle, but Frankenstein in the sense that Mazda is the first to admit that this is basically an R&D project in reality because of the nature of their company and who they're competing against and the time frame that they need to get into EV. So this essentially is their best foot forward into that market. And one thing that can be assured is Mazda, they know what they're doing, and they have always made a very premium vehicle that's fun to drive and easy to live with. And I am sure after we review this, we will agree with this as well, just as long as you don't need to drive more than 160 kilometers. So buyer beware. So let's take a look at the facts, feels, and final thoughts of the 2023 Mazda MX-30 EV GT. We'll give you as many facts as we can up front, test out how they feel, and lead you to your final thought. And if you are a subscriber, well, you are a fellow Neutral reviewer, so please leave your short review in the description or in the comments below. So here we go. All right, here we go. Okay, so first impressions when I picked this up, it is a very good looking vehicle. I have to say that. It looks extremely premium. Mazda always does, but I actually had a neighbor come up and thought it was a $100,000 vehicle and a Lexus in the driveway. So that's a compliment, hopefully, to Mazda. I mean, I really like the interior. I'm an IKEA type person. I like modern houses and things like that, so this is up my alley, so to speak. I do like the dash here. It's very much like Honda, and hopefully that's not offensive, but I just like the new Honda style, and I really like this on the dash. A lot of interesting materials like this cork here, yeah, the Mazda used to be a cork company, so way back when. Yeah, all in all, I'd have to say first impressions were, yeah, really good looking vehicle, and once I started driving it, it did feel like the Mazda. You know, fun, really easy to drive. We'll talk more about that throughout the course of the review, of course. But yeah, no, really good, and it seems easy to live with. I wasn't sure about these crazy suicide type doors, but yeah, my first impressions were it really wasn't that bad. There's a few rants and raves again that we'll talk about later on, but the only thing I was a little disappointed on is I think that the starting price of this is a little steep. So I'm glad that they started with the entry level, and again, they're not priced by any means from their competition. That's just the way it is nowadays, unfortunately. So you're looking at about $50,000 Canadian for an average price on anything nowadays, and this falls right in line with that. So the base model starts around $42,000 Canadian plus fees and taxes. So realistically, you're about $45,000 there plus taxes, and you can get all the way up to the GT here. You're looking at $47,000 Canadian plus fees and taxes, so basically $50,000. So now you do get a lot, as you can see in the screen, on your base model GS for that. You know, you really do. Mazda is kind of that premium, kind of like an Acura without the type of marketing that Acura and things do, but it is a very nice vehicle. But yeah, it is. As an entry level, I don't know how people coming out of school, depending on what they're doing or just starting in the workforce, can afford a vehicle like this, but that's what they are, as we said. So competition, you're looking at probably the Nissan Leaf, which is a similar type size, maybe a little bit bigger than this, and obviously going to be a lot better on range. And the Nissan as well, is a vehicle that has been doing the electric thing for quite a while, so they know what they're doing on that little vehicle. Now, is it going to drive as nice as this? No. Is it going to be as premium as this? No. Is it going to be as handsome as this? No. But I mean, if you happen to go anywhere, you know, further than, you know, down the street, it's going to be a lot more usable. vehicle because of the range. Now, that Kona, the new Kona EV is probably similar in the sense of you're going to get a lot more range. It's going to be a similar size to this. And obviously, being a Hyundai, it's not going to be as premium, but it might be a little bit more feature-rich. And again, there's some weird things on this that it is missing, like it's missing, even at the top level here, it doesn't have wireless charging. Which I find strange. I really do, that they excluded that. Now, they probably made the budget choice to include more premium materials in here, but that's a little strange. And yeah, you don't have wireless Apple CarPlay or Android Auto at any level either, so that's a little bit strange. But yeah, all in all, it is a great vehicle. I was very impressed with my first impressions, price and competition. So let us pull over and do some performance type tests. Here we go. Okay, now that we pulled over, let's do some performance tests. So the first one that we want to do is our acceleration braking test. But to do that, let's talk about some performance facts. So it uses their 35.5 kilowatt hour battery pack, which powers their 80 kilowatt power electric engine up front, so it is front wheel drive to keep in mind with that. What else to talk about? Well, 143 horsepower and 200 pound-feet of torque does not sound like a lot, but because it's electric engine, the way it delivers it, it's not too bad. But it does rocket this 3,700 pound interesting little vehicle from 0 to 60 in just under 10 seconds, which again doesn't sound like a lot, but again in real life it does do just fine, and we'll see that in a second. What else to talk about? Well, we're going to brake on this one, so it does use 2 piston up front, 1 piston in the rear. Does have a 2 regenerative braking setting, which again does work pretty good. What else to talk about? Yeah, so it's a direct drive, no real transmission on this. So yeah, so here we go. All right, so we'll put it into drive, and there's no sport mode or anything on this rocket ship here. So here we go. Ooh. Okay, there we go. Now it starts to pick up. Now this actually feels like way more than 143 horsepower. So here we go. Oh. My favorite part. Oh, that actually brakes really, really good. Pass. So what we're going to do next is our quick turnaround test. Just see if we can turn around in a hurry. And as we are doing that, does not have the best turning radius for a tiny little thing. You would think it would. It's not too bad. Here we go. All right. We'll still say it. We'll give it a pass. But as we're heading back here, no, the acceleration and braking feels very gas-like to me. And that regenerative braking or one-pedal braking, it's not actually one-pedal braking, it's very nice. It's you let your foot off, and it really does give you a nice controlled stop. Not to a complete stop, but just about like on a gasoline car when you get to about here, and then you let off your foot and you kind of coast a bit. That's what this one pedal braking does. It's a very smooth, very controlled, easy to modulate. Really does feel more like a gasoline car aside from the lack of noise. Okay, now that we're pulled over, we want to do our handling test. It's going to be a little bit different today because this is not a performance car, so we don't want to go crazy on our handling. And we're not going to do our highway and handling test because really with 100 miles and 160 kilometers worth of range, you're probably not going to go on the highway that much. So what I want to do is do some back roads, some scenic back roads, and just give you an idea how it handles in reality around some sharp corners, some different undulations and things like that. And to talk about that, let's talk about some of the facts, the performance facts. So when we're looking at suspension on this, it's a little bit different than a lot of CUVs nowadays. You're going to have your McPherson strut up front, but you're going to have like a torsion beam rear end, which is kind of more of like a straight axle type setup that kind of twists a bit. So it's not the most sophisticated or modern technology, but again, Mazda is all about handling. So if anyone can figure out that archaic system, they can. And usually it's a packaging reason that they do that, so they can fit more things. What else? When we're talking about tires, you have 18-inch aluminum rims on this one. And the tires work okay. They're just normal tires on here. And what else? You got to steer. So of course it uses electronic steering nowadays, power assisted electronic. Yeah, and it uses the Mazda 3 chassis. So it's a very good platform and chassis for good driving dynamics. So let's go. All right, here we go. So we got it in drive. There's no sport mode or anything else like that. We'll get going at a good speed here. So again, this is a front-wheel drive vehicle, but it's a little bit different than a gasoline engine, just the way that it propels you. It does understeer a bit, but it definitely feels strange compared to a gasoline car. As you can see, it's a pretty big corner here. It's residential, so we don't want to go too fast, of course. And there's a slow sign, so we're gonna go slow. But yeah, it handles really nice, really controlled and smooth. Now it's not that heavy. It's around 3,700 pounds, which, you know, for a lifted hatchback, I guess is a little bit heavy. But considering a lot of the electric cars that have way bigger batteries, like this only has that 35.5 kilowatt power battery in the back, so it's not a ton of weight. So you do get a little bit of movement. It's definitely not like the Mazda 3, that's for sure. You can definitely, even though that weight is fairly low, you can feel it. So if you're used to driving a gas car, it definitely is different than a gas car. But I have to say, compared to driving a lot of other electric cars, this handles really, really good. I can't believe Mazda's so good at making a fun handling car that I have to say this definitely passes. Okay, next is our parking test. We're gonna do a parallel park. We haven't done one of these in about 20 years, and there's no special parking features on this besides a nice dynamic lined camera on here that does also have the 360 cutout there. So let's give it a try. This is terrifying. All right, here we go. All right. Oh, but this being a city vehicle, you're probably gonna do some of this. So here we go. I hope my driver's ed teacher's watching. This is incredible. Pass. Okay, now that we've pulled over, let's take a better look at the back of the MX-30. So we're not even gonna try to do any dancing because I know that there's no sensors on this one, so we'll just pop it the traditional way, and of course you could use your key fob as well. Now that being said, one feature that I do like is the fact that they've added this button up here so you can lock it. So even if you have your hands full, you can still hit the lock button and not have to fish around in your pocket. Now, one thing to say back here, because this is built on the Mazda 3, or basically it's a lifted hatchback, you're not gonna get much more space than in a car like that. So when we look back here, I've folded down one of the back seats, and the reason being is it is very inconvenient to put down those back seats because of the fact, we'll see in a minute, that the doors are unconventional on the side of this. So they kind of open up like barn doors or suicide doors or backwards from each other. With that being so, regardless, you've got to open up both those doors and then lean in to put down those back seats. So because of that inconvenient door situation, and most people probably won't be using this car for passengers all the time, I think that they should have made it a little bit easier to fold down those back seats, because this vehicle is probably going to be used for cargo more often than not. And when we talk about cargo, you're looking at about 14 cubic feet with both seats up, and about double that, 36 cubic feet with them down. And again, that's kind of hatchback type size. And when we look here, there's not a lot going back here. I don't see any power outlets or things like that, but there is a couple nice little doodads to help you tie down some of your things, or actually your charging cable bag for at home right here, for your level 1 charging, your adapter. And then here, yep, we have your spare tire kit and some tools and some Bose sound system things. But other than that, there's not a lot going on back here, because really this is just meant to be a quick kind of commuter car and just to throw some stuff in the back. So let's go to the front and see how it is to sit in there. Okay, getting into the back of the MX-30, and this is a bit of a trick. Now, what you have to do is you open up the front door, and as you can see, this door unconventionally opens up kind of like a pickup truck rear door on the full-size cabs or a lot of SUVs now, almost 90 degrees, and that's because you have to open this door backwards. So as you can see, this one here, you need to have them both open up quite a bit so you can get stuff in, like your stuffed baby moose. So let's give that a try. Now this is where it gets a little interesting here, if you are going to use this car for that type of purpose, because they do have child safety seat latches in here, but I have a normal size car seat for my moose baby, and he's not going to fit in conveniently. So we're going to have to push this seat all the way forward, and they also give you a nice convenient feature here where it leans forward, and then, Moose, we can get you in there. All right, here we go. Oh. And we'll put that seat back just to see how far we can put it back and still have it safe for the baby. So depending on the baby, this is an actual baby seat. You could put it back a little bit further. And this is about where I would have it as a 5'7" driver. So not a ton of space back there. You can technically do it. Now let's sit back there as an adult and see what it's like. So one nice thing with this platform being a bit of a raised hatchback is just that it's a little bit easier to get in and out of, whether it's front or back. So we'll move the Moose here. All right, Moose. We'll come get you in a second, buddy. Okay, so here, let me sit in here. So with that door being open the way it is, you can get in fairly easy, as you can see. Now, I'm 5'7", 150 pounds. And again, this seat here, they have these convenient buttons. You can move the seat here, back, forward, and recline. I don't know, to be honest with you, whether or not you can use these while the vehicle is driving. I would hope not. You wouldn't want to have anyone playing those games with you. But they have made an effort here to cut out the back of these seats, kind of like a luxury vehicle, because that's just dead space in here. So that helps give you an extra little bit of leg room if you are putting any adults back here. Now again, as an adult, especially with this sloping roof, I'm surprised there's more room than you would think. These seats are comfortable. Now this material here, this sustainable material, is interesting. It's more of a cloth fabric type thing. It feels very durable, but it does look nice and premium considering it's cloth, and I do like that idea. And it's firm. Doesn't feel overly expensive as far as the cushioning goes, but it's good enough, definitely, because you're probably not using this for people very often. You do have a middle seat, and because of the way that it's more of a flat bench, it's not the worst of middle seats, but again, I wouldn't say it's overly comfortable by any means. Now, one of the other things to keep in mind as well, that when you close this door, because of the nature of this vehicle, it reminds me of my dad's old S10 Chevy pickup truck. Now, you did sit sideways, but you kind of got stuffed in a very coffin-like situation here. But one thing that I do have to say is they do give these two little port-type windows to give you a little bit more visibility. So again, I wouldn't say, I'm not somebody that suffers from claustrophobia, but I don't feel anywhere close to that. And there are certain situations I do sometimes. So it's not that bad that way. But again, there's not a lot of effort back here. You don't have any air conditioning vents even, or buttons, or you don't have any plugins or anything else like that, because again, this vehicle, I think if people are going back here, it's probably kids or it's in a pinch, and it's more about just having a little bit of cargo, as we saw. That's probably just enough. It's hatchback worthy, and it's more about the driving dynamics up front. So let's take a look up front. All right, getting into the front of the MX-30 EV. So let's start off with the steering wheel, like we always like to do, because I'm a sucker for steering wheels, and this is a nice one. I love Mazda. It's very premium, and they just do a really good job, especially with driving pieces, engagement pieces. So the steering wheel, great diameter, very sporty, very luxury feeling, very soft. Not too big, not too small in either the diameter or, you know, the rim here. And I like that they kept hard buttons, and they're premium looking, premium feeling on here. So basically you got your safety stuff over here and a lot of your infotainment type stuff and things to change some of the graphics on here, which we'll look at in a second. But the steering wheel is also telescopic and tilting, which is nice. Lots of adjustment there. And when we talk about adjustment, we'll talk about these seats. So you do have quite a bit of adjustment. You got power over here. Which is nice, and you can go really low or really high, which I like as well. And there's lots of movement in the track this way. This seat over here is manual with its adjustment, but let's look at these materials over here, because this is part of what this vehicle is about, which is giving you this really welcoming, futuristic, sustainable type interior. And I have to say, it's very interesting. So let's just look at the visibility first of all. So as you can see, there's a decent amount of visibility, but one of the other things to keep in mind is the fact that it has a very low roof line and a very high belt line. So it gives you the impression of being in something kind of tankish and very interesting, very utilitarian, very distinctive, and very safe feeling. Yeah, I kind of like that. Yet, I'm only 5'7", 150 pounds, as we were saying, and I do have the seat up probably at least in the middle position for height, and I still feel, even with the sunroof, like I've got a decent amount of space here. But one of the things to talk about when we talk about practicality, or the lack thereof, depending on who you are, is we have a lot more storage down here, and it is super inconvenient to try to plug in your phone, because it is nice that they've given you a couple USB plugs there and a nice big full plug for plugging in things like coolers and things like that. But be careful, because it will drain the main battery pretty quick. But it is because of Mazda's philosophy on safety. So they want to make sure that your phone is not distracting you, and it's the same with this infotainment. So let's talk about that quickly. I really do like this screen. We just had a Mazda Miata. It had a brutal screen, looked like it was from about 20 years ago. This is a modern widescreen, great resolution and things like that. And it's a great system. Mazda has a really good user-friendly, intuitive, just give you what you need type system. And this being the GT, actually have navigation as well. But one of the things that Mazda's philosophy is as with safety, and we mentioned it in the Miata video, and we gave them a hard time about that because I did not agree with them with the Miata, because what they think is they provide no touchscreen and this beautiful set of wheels, dials, and buttons down here that they would like you to memorize. And again, it's not that hard to memorize after a little while. Muscle memory. But the problem is on that Miata, it was behind the seats and you were behind there fishing and you couldn't figure out where they were, and it was more dangerous. And it was super easy to touch that screen because it's a small car, even with my little dinosaur arms. Now, this one here, they purposely put that screen in and away from you so you can't touch it, and it's not touch screen because they want you using this. And in this vehicle, I have to say it has been designed for that purpose, and I would agree with them because these buttons are really nice to touch and feel, and they're really easy to get to. It is very ergonomic. Now, one of the things that I find curious about this is where compromise comes in. So because they are marketing this to a younger generation who is into technology, they're kind of going against their own philosophy and rules by putting in a screen down here that's a touch screen for your heating and ventilation. But one of the things that I do like is they kind of have kept true to their rule and philosophy by adding hard buttons that you could use instead that are easy to reach, again, even with my dinosaur arms. But there is a little bit more on the screen here that you could do, and if you are going to touch it, as you can see, it is very responsive, crisp, and clear, and works well. You've got your heated outer seats and your heated steering wheel, and you can turn off your air conditioning there and things like that. But yeah, it does work pretty good. Being a Mazda, you know, all of the switch gear in here is super, super nice. Not only the material's nice, but that is as well. They all work good, feel good, and the sound system, again, being the Bose sound system, works really well as well. And in this one here, you do have a sunroof, which is nice. But the main thing with this vehicle is its driving experience, because that is Mazda's claim to fame. It's premium, you can see in here, easy to live with, but most importantly, Mazda always gives a really nice, fun driving experience where you want to get in the car. So let's take this for one further drive. We will do our rants, raves, and lead to our final thoughts. Okay, now that we're on the road again, let's go into our rants and raves and lead into our final thoughts. Bump. And not bad, so the suspension's not bad on this. So that is a rave right there, is the suspension, including the fact that it's got a torsion beam back there. Doesn't usually worry me with Mazda because they do such a good job. This thing rides really, really well. Sometimes electric vehicles, because of the weight, the suspension has trouble dealing with it, and you get a lot of kind of floaty movement and things like that, but it does not feel like that as we showed in some of the tests. It really does work pretty good. It does not feel like a hatchback or anything else like that, but I really have to rave that it does handle really well. One of the other things that we said that we wanted to rave about was just how easy it is to live with. Being a smaller vehicle, it's easy to maneuver, get around, and it's quite convenient. You know, there's lots and lots of spaces to put stuff and things like that that we showed. But yeah, but really what I want to rant about isn't so much the lack of performance, because 143 horsepower and basically 10 seconds 0 to 60 sounds terrible, you know, and it is terrible. But just because of the nature of the electric engines, or electric motors, I should say, the way that they deliver that power or that torque, it's so smooth and so responsive in the low end that it does not feel unsafe by any means. It actually, in a way, feels kind of, I wouldn't say zippy, but definitely feels not unsafe. I had a Hyundai Veloster once, the first generation, and that thing was scary. It was just not enough power at all. But no, this is great that way. But what we want to rant about is the range. 100 miles or 160 kilometers nowadays is unacceptable. It really is. I understand Mazda's position. They're not a big company. They're fighting giants like Toyota and Honda, who've been in the hybrid or electric game for a while. You know, and I do appreciate that they've started in the entry level and worked that way up instead of, you know, making electric only accessible to, you know, the elite or the ultra rich, you know. So I do appreciate that, but realistically, you know, when they marketed this car in California last year as a 2022, you know, basically to the tech individuals, you know, they can afford that type of entry-level vehicle, and for the most part, they're commuting within a city, right? But now that they've opened it up to the rest of North America, most of North America does not have the infrastructure, especially Canada, to support you know, electric vehicles for people that need to charge on the go. Yeah, obviously, if you just plug it into your house, it's super convenient. It's nice not to have to go to a gas station. But when I did pick up this vehicle, it was not an enjoyable experience at all. And this is not a Mazda thing, because the vehicle itself it was not a vehicle issue. It's the infrastructure issue. And that is my rant. It was awful. It took me 45 minutes to figure out. First of all, I had to drive all around to find a place. It's not like a gas station, right? So you see a gas station and it's busy, and you go, oh, well, you know, maybe I'll just wait a few minutes, because for the most part, you know, unless a transport truck is filling up, you can get in and out pretty quick, right? Not necessarily with a charging facility, because people plug in their car and they go away for a while, and it takes hours sometimes to charge the vehicle. So, you know, it's not ideal. So you got to just keep on going. And once you do find a place, and again, you know, no offense to a lot of these companies that are having electric, but you know, as far as the providers go, but you know, where I did go, you'll see signs or the machines that say available, and then you go to plug in and they're not available. And then in the one that I did, it stuck in the car, and then the car locked on it, and then I had to call the number, and the person said that I shouldn't have put it in because it's unavailable, even though it said available. Because now the car thought that I was stealing the electricity, because of course when you do go into Starbucks or something, you don't want somebody just to grab it out of your car and put it in theirs, and then you're paying for it, right? So it's not ideal. And then after all that, then it's not like a gas station where you just pay with your credit card or your debit card or cash or something after you pump in what you need to get going. No, you had to have an app, and then the app didn't work and it crashed, and then I had to call again. And anyway, it took 45 minutes just to figure out how to hook it up, and that didn't include driving around. And then they told me to read the owner's manual to figure out how to unlock the car to get the thing out of the side of it. And it was 30 some odd degrees Celsius here, which is very hot, and I was 10 minutes, 12 minutes reading the owner's manual with the air conditioning on and nothing else, and I literally went from 88 kilometers worth of range to 63. So that's where range anxiety comes in. A lot of people don't want to talk about it, but buyer beware. This is a wonderful vehicle. It's great, but if you're in town and you never need to travel, then it's wonderful. But if you do need to travel, it is a real hassle, you know, unless you have a time machine and can go 20 years from now. So that's my rant. That was a long one, and I apologize, and it's not Mazda's fault at all. We're just rushing into electric, it would seem, and not everywhere is quite ready for it. So I often will suggest a decent plug-in hybrid for those that need to travel but still want to be part of this electric movement. So anyway, that's my rants and raves. All in all, will lead to our final thoughts that this really does seem to be a easy to live with, fun to drive, and premium little vehicle. Now, if you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe, turn on notifications, and check out one of our other small EV car reviews so we can get more cool cars like this one in our upcoming review. Now, we started off this review by looking to give you as many facts as we could, test out how they feel to help lead you to your final thought. And as we said, if you are a subscriber, that means you are a fellow neutral reviewer, and to please leave your short review in the comments below. Now, here are the facts and feels that we use to come up with your final thought. Which is, you can see that you have 143 horsepower and 200 pound-feet of torque, which doesn't sound like a lot on paper and definitely doesn't look great on the 0 to 60. But because of this being an electric vehicle and how the torque is delivered, I felt totally fine, as you could see, in most driving situations. Really, the only thing that the buyer must beware on this vehicle, as we mentioned, is that range. Now, if you are one of those California buyers like this was originally marketed for, and you aren't driving, you know, anywhere really easily during the week, and you don't need to go anywhere on the weekends. Well, 160 kilometers, around 100 miles range is plenty, especially when you can plug it in at home. But with that being said, that's really the only downside to this. Again, aside from the price being pretty high for entry level. But again, the Nissan Leaf and the Kona is very similar. That's just the way it is nowadays. But as Mazda has always done, they've delivered again and given a very fun to drive vehicle that is easy to live with and very premium. So that being the case, I don't think that you can go wrong with the 2023 Mazda MX-30 GT EV. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time.